All right, in this video, what I want to build is a weekly skill check form that's going to keep track of how my students are doing on these weekly skill checks, whether it's a standard that we're working on or some sort of a grammar skill or an ELA skill or a math skill or whatever it is. It's going to keep track of how they're doing on those throughout the entire year, and it's going to put all of them into the same Google Sheet, and then I can sort by the assessment. So like if week 1 we were working on transitions, I can see how they did on that. Week 2 we're working on redundancy, I can see that. And I can see punctuation. So this is going to help me to be able to adjust the way that I'm teaching based off of which students are kind of struggling with this or which ones are doing well on it. And I can also see for a student from like a progress reporting perspective and talking to students about how they're doing. I can sort by the students and I can see they probably wouldn't have taken redundancy twice, but just to get some data in there, we did it. So you can see how the different assessments show up for each of these students, and I can pick them and if we're having like a conference or something, have it right in front of me. And the way that the form gets into there is through a Google form. And so the student would go, they would pick their name, they would choose the assessment that they're taking. This week we're working on punctuation. And then they would get the punctuation questions. They would put in their answers. And that would show up. And then it would show up in both the student name one, the assessment one, and it would also show up in the Google form here with like the raw data. So I'm going to restart this. I'm going to open up a new Google Sheet, and we're going to go through how to build this weekly skill check system. All right, once I've got my Google Sheet opened up and I've got it named, whatever I want to name this thing, whether it's ELA skill check or math skill check or science skill check or whatever, I'm going to make a Google form. I'm going to put my first week's assessment in here. So I add my questions. Should be named the same, which is really nice. And the first question I'm going to put in here is, since the students are going to be coming on here and they're going to be choosing their name or putting in their name, I'm going to make that the first question. And I want to use a drop down because then it's going to be the same name every time instead of them having to type in like a short answer right here, where you have to worry about whether or not they use the capital letter or put a space after their name, and it'll change the output on the sheet if they did. So I want to give a drop down, and I want to put my entire roster in here. So just so it's the same every time. And I can either copy and paste, add in there, whatever. So then I choose my next question. This is going to be, again, a multiple choice, something that I'm telling them what I want because I'm going to sort based off of this. So this is going to be, what assessment are you taking? And this could be however you need to name it so that it makes sense to you when you're looking through your Google Sheet and trying to sort based off of it. So it could be something like week 1 ELA check, or it could be the skill that you're working on. It could be we're working on transitions this week, or it could be something like punctuation, or it could be something like capital letters, or whatever it is that you're working on that week. You can really name this whatever you want. I'm just going to put the first one in there. We'll get to next week's assessment in a bit. Then I'm going to create a new section. I click this button to do that. And so that if we had multiple assessments in here, we could set it up so that it'll send from choosing this option directly to the section that we want. And so we're just going to name them the exact same. Transitions. Okay, now I add my questions on here, and I'm not going to add actual questions. I'm just going to go question 1, option 1. But this is where you'd put your different questions down. Question 2, option 1 through 4, option 1 through 4. And I think 3 questions is probably about right on this. So we'll leave it right there. Then I got to go through and I am going to look at my settings. So I'm going to make this a quiz so that it's automatically graded, because if it's multiple choice, I might as well automatically grade it. I can do immediately after each submission. That's fine. It's auto graded. Missed questions. Can they see which ones they got incorrect? Correct answers. Do we want them to see that? Make your own calls on that. Default is 1 point for each question. Responses. Collect email addresses. We might want to do that, especially if they're selecting their name, just in case something were to happen where someone chose the wrong name. Then we at least have the email address that put in that form. That is going to cause them to have to sign in, I believe. We also probably want to limit, no, we don't want to limit to 1 response if we keep using the same form. So don't do that part. Form defaults. Nope. Okay. So now that we've got this set as a quiz, we can go through. We can have it validating. Well, that's fine. I don't know if it matters either way. So the name one I definitely want to make, so this is 0 points. The assessment, I definitely want to make this to be 0 points. Sometimes Google does this where I've got to go through and refresh to be able to change the answer key for this one. So I'm just going to go 0 points. These ones should all be set up to be 1 point, and I'm just going to make question 1, option 1 is the right answer. I'm going to make question 2, option 2 is the right answer. And then question 3, option 3 is the right answer. And so we'll be right in here. So now I've got my answer key set up, and I can put in some responses just to make sure that it's working. Oops. I can go my name, Justin. I'm trying to take the transitions test, and then I can see that it sends me right to this section on transitions. I can go through, pick all of the right answers, check to see that it went into my form, and it did. So I can see my score, I can see my name, timestamp, all of this stuff. Now the way that I want this to look, I want to see my score first. I actually don't really care because I'm using this on a bunch of different assessments. This is going to change what's in here. I don't really care what their answer was. That's a whole nother deal. In this situation, I'm just trying to see what their score was. So this score, 3 out of 4, is making me think that something might be off here. I'm wondering where that extra point's coming from. 0. This one, I did not fix that. So let's go through here. Hopefully that would change. We will fix that in a bit. Okay, so I've got my first assessment set up in here, and now let's say all of my students took this one. I wanted to go through and I wanted to do another assessment. A couple different ways I could do this. I could change this name so that I'm only giving them one option for that first assessment that they're taking, and then I could get rid of this section here, and then I could redo all of my questions so that there's only ever one assessment stuck in here, but it's still the same form going into the Google Sheet. I want it to be the same form so that I don't have to keep connecting all of these Google Sheets all the time. So that's one option that I could do, that is just change what I have in here for my new form next week. Another option that I could do is I could add, if I want to keep my form and keep all of it active in here so I could like keep reusing it in the future, I could just add the next skill that we're working on right here for like redundancy. And then I could set this up. I could add a new section for redundancy. And then add all my questions in. Oops. See if I can get it this time. There we go. Okay. And then the way that I would set this up now is I would go, and after somebody took the transitions part, the form would be submitted, so they wouldn't move on to the redundancy section. So I'm basically like splitting up these sections into their own things, and then I would take this little 3 dots, go to section based off answer, and if someone chose the transitions assessment, they would go to the transitions section, and if they chose the redundancy section, they would go to the redundancy section, and they wouldn't even see the transition section. So if I wanted to keep this form active so I could use it year after year and keep having all of my questions there, I could do that part, and that would work out perfectly fine, so that way they're not going through the whole form. I just need to make sure that this says continue on to next section, and this says submit form, and then I need to set up my answer key on this one. Now one issue with this is that your max score is going to be off. So you can see that now, since I added 3 questions, this quiz is worth 6 points. So if you keep all of your assessments in the same form, what's going to happen is your max score isn't going to work. You're not going to be able to tell how they're doing based off of that. You're going to have to keep all of the questions for each section the exact same. so that you're not guessing like, oh, was this one worth 2 or was this worth 3 or 4 or 5 or anything like that. So that's what I'm doing in here. I actually like this version better because I can keep using this form year after year. So now if I go and try to submit something as Justin, and maybe I don't like this email collection part. Now I can go to redundancy, and I should go directly to the redundancy section. So I don't even see the transition one. I'm still getting 3 out of 3. And I can see that that gets added. So now my score was 3 on both of them. This one was out of 4. This one was out of 6. So again, you can't really look at that max score. And this is why the questions don't really matter, because it's going to change every time I do this. So however you do that, you end up setting up your weekly skill check form, the part that the students are entering, either replacing things or adding on to it. But whatever way you do it, you need to make sure that this question, whatever's going into here, is different for each one, because in the next step we're going to sort based off of what's in this right here, so we can sort those different assessments. Okay, and so the way that I'm going to do that is by making this sheet that says sort by assessment. So I want to be able to pick my week 1 check, my week 2 check, my transitions checks, my redundancy check, and have all the students' answers show up for that. Not answers, but their score on it. So I want to make sure that whatever I use is my criteria for my query, because it's going to take a query here, and it's going to be based off of whatever is selected in a certain cell, selecting these assessment names. I want to make sure that that name is the exact same every time and that it matches what's going into this form. So I'm going to run a data validation. So I'm going to go assessment here, and then in the cell directly below that, I'm going to go to data validation. My cell range is right, it's the cell that I want. I want to list from a range, and I want to enter a range or formula. So I want to click in here, and I want to make it so that whatever shows up in this D column is always going to get added to my data validation, so that in the future when I have, hopefully 5, 6, 7 different types of weekly assessments, they're all going to show up as an option that I can choose. So I see that it says form responses. I just dragged down this D column. I did not drag on the header. Form responses 3, which is the name of the sheet. D2 all the way down the column of D. So I get rid of those 2 numbers. And it should take all of the data that shows up in this column. And right now I've got transitions and redundancy, which is good. I can check it to make sure that it's right by adding another one, so that when another form comes in here, I'm still getting that. I am getting punctuation, so we're all set up. Perfect. Okay. So now what I want to do is I want to pull the data based off of this cell and what's shown in here. I want to pull any data that shows up in this Google form responses that has this assessment that I want. So I'm going to write a query, and we're going to go student data, and my query is going to be equals query, add my parentheses, and my data that I want is from A, my timestamp. I want the student names, I want their scores, and I am going to pull the assessment just for fun. I don't really care what they said for these questions, because realistically there's not enough time for me to go through and look for trends. That's kind of a different topic, to look for the trends in an individual assessment. This is really just which assessments are they doing well, who's doing well on them, and who's not doing well on them. So I'm going to put these form responses in here. And again, just like before, I want this to keep taking data as the form gets entered in here. So I'm going to get rid of the number behind D, so that it's going from A1 all the way down the D column. And it'll take this whole block. Then I'm going to put a column or a comma here. And now my select, I'm going to go select A, B, C, D, because I want all of those columns. And now my criteria is going to be where I'm sorting based off of column D. D equals, and I'm just going to write in when I want to reference some words in a query, this is what I have to do: single quote, double quote, and sign, double quote, single quote, and then in between these 2 and signs, I'm going to put the cell name of that that data validation in there. I'm going to wait until I get back to that sheet to do that so I can look at it. It's A2, but I think it's nice to look at it while we're doing it. So the next part of this is going to be anything I want to order by or limit. I don't want to limit anything because I want all of the assessments that show transitions. I could put another criteria in here. I don't really want to put another criteria in, but I do want to order these by B, and I want to go, I feel like I want to go descending. I'd like it to be alphabetical from top to bottom. So I'm going to order by B so that they show up in that way in case I got to transfer these over to some gradebook. Order by D, and then I do have one column of headings, so I'm going to go comma 1, and then I'm going to go right here. So I've got an error because I don't have anything in this spot, and this is where I can look at my and sign. I can see that this is A2, and I'm just going to type in A2. A2, and so this should work. Perfect. So now I can see the time that it happened, the student's name, the score, and which assessment they're taking. I can go through and I can check just to make sure this is transition. So let's go through. Transitions. Oh no, I don't want to do the same student. Let's go to a different kid. Dave's taking this one. Transitions. Option 1, option 1, option 1. 1 out of 3 it should be. Goes here, and so yeah, it does show up with that transitions one. Redundancy. Transitions, perfect. Okay. I can take this C and I can run some sort of a number here so I can get rid of, that's where I'm getting rid of my max score. If I don't care about seeing what the max score was, and I just want to see the score, if I'm keeping it to 3 every time, I can do that by just going up to format number, get rid of the decimal signs, and then they should be able to see right away what the score was on that one. Now this is a nice place where if I wanted to run some sort of like a calculation on this, where I want to see, what's my class average, I could easily do that here by typing equals average and then just go all the way down this column. And then, as kids get added to this, it would adjust the average, or, max, min, median, anything like that. So you can put a little dashboard right here, and it'll get you any sort of like stats that you want on all of the kids' assessments for this assessment, which can be a really nice part. Kind of customize it a little bit. But that's how we sort based off of assessments. Now we can do the same exact thing pretty much for sort by student. And so I can type in here. I'm going to type in student name, and then same thing as before, I'm going to write a query, and it's going to be based off of whatever's in this cell. And so I want to make sure that all of my students' names are exactly what they look like in the form responses and exactly what they're set up as, so they're exact same every time. So like if I'm keeping the form the exact same that they're choosing from, and I'm picking from what they're choosing from, it's always going to be the exact same. So I select my data validation, go down column B, get rid of the number after B so that it's going to keep working, and then go save. So now I have all of my students in here as my options. And then I write a query, same type of deal. Let's go query. My data is going to be the same. Get rid of my D. And this is going to be A, B, C, D, where, and now it's going to be where B equals, and I'm just going to type that A2 in here. Order by, and now this time I might want to order by my timestamp because now all of my students' names are the exact same. I might not want to order by score. I might not want to order by the assessment because then it's going to be based off of the name. Unless I'm doing like week 1, week 2, week 3, then it would be really nice. Otherwise I can do order by the timestamp, and I'm going to go descending here. 1. Okay. So now I can see all of Dave's scores. I can see all of Justin's scores based off of the timestamp, and it is from most recent to oldest, which is nice to have. I should look and see if this worked out. This actually didn't work out the way I wanted it to. This part, we want to go ascending. ASC. So now I've got my alphabetical order on the names here, which is nice, especially when you're, maybe you have to put this into a grade book or something like that. Okay, so I've got my students ordered here. I go to number, go down like that so I can see all their scores. And again, I can write any sort of metrics that I want over on this side and go min and pull which assessment they did poorly on. I could also do something like a conditional formatting here if I wanted to go to conditional formatting and make all of the 3s green, all of the 2s yellow, and all of the 1s and 0s red, so I can see which ones they really struggled with. You really have a lot of customization that you can do with this part, but that's really how the Google Sheet works, and it should be set up so that it works for future assessments. So we're going to test that out right now. So we're going to rebuild this. If I wanted to now do punctuation, here's what I have to do. Again, either I could replace all of this, or I could go punctuation, and I'm going to go down and add a section called punctuation here. Add a question. Go question 1, option 1 through 4. I'm going to go oops, not 5, 4. Right there, I can change my answer key. Let's go same, reverse order, I guess. So this is just honestly entering it in, but it's nice. The nice thing about using Google Sheets and Google Forms is that once you've got this built, you can use it forever. The things that I got to make sure that I change though is this needs to say submit form so that when they get done with the redundancy part, they're not going on to the punctuation part. And then I need to make sure that this says send to punctuation. I could, if I wanted to, so we didn't have students taking the transitions part over and over and over again, I could keep all of the questions in here so I don't have to rewrite them. And I could get rid of the option to go to the transitions and redundancy. That can be a nice part of that. One other little thing that I just thought of that we can show is you can import questions from other forms. So if you click this button here and you have your transitions check in a different form, you can import those questions in from there so you don't have to rewrite all of the questions. But this should work for a new assessment. So let's go again, dave@gmail.com. Let's have Dave take the punctuations one. So he goes right to punctuation. He's again going to score a 1. I go to submit, and everything should work out. So we can see that Dave's punctuation shows up right here. Again, my max score is going to change because now I've got 9 questions in instead of 3 or 6. I go to the assessment, and I can see that I have a punctuation assessment here, and Dave took it and he scored a 1. So as other students go through and take that punctuation assessment, they should get added to this form here. And then if I go to Dave's assessments, I can see that he took the punctuations and he scored a 1 on it, and he took the transitions and also scored a 1 on it. So everything's working. I can keep adding more assessments to this Google form and then keep using the Google Sheet. And the really nice part about this is that as long as I use the same Google form, I don't have to keep going through and writing these queries and sorting all this data. It's just going to take whatever shows up as long as it looks the same in here. And it's going to take that and keep building on what we've already built. So then there's a ton of formatting stuff you could do with this and make it look nice. Put your metrics over here, make this bold, put a little, fill in here. But that's like the guts of how this works out. So that's how we can take a Google form and a Google Sheet and build a weekly skill check, and then build some dashboards for sorting by our assessments so that we can put in the grades right away, or just see how students are doing on it and then change how we're teaching based off of that. And then also how we can see how one student's doing, whether it's we want to have a progress report, or we've got to do some sort of reporting for this, or when conference show up, we can just pull this up and show it right away, and it gives some data right in the face of that. So that is how we build the weekly skill check.